Hello, good evening and welcome to my humble model railway. Tonight we're going to have a running session. We're trying to get as many locomotives as we can. I'm having a Somerset and Dorset joint railway running session tonight. Some of my locomotives, one of them I bought before the lockdown many years ago, probably in the early 2000s, but all the rest of these locomotives, the 7F, the 2P and the Jinty, were all bought fairly recently. And they're all welcome additions to my layout. Now the first train we're going to see running tonight is the Midland Railway coaches being pulled by the LMS liveried 7F 13810. So if you just bear with me just a moment, we'll just get her moving out to the station. Yep, that's fine. And what we'll do is we'll talk about why a freight engine 7F is actually putting passengers. Okay, so out we go. There we are, so we're out of the station now. Quite a nice little run out to the station there. And we'll just send it around the track. And we'll talk about why these locomotives were built and why this one is on a passenger train. Okay, so round we go. Maybe just a moment, just going to check that I've got the points right. Yes, I have. Okay, so we'll give her a nice little run around the track now for a little while. Got my nice little running session. I'll watch her go around the other side now and out through the country station. And whiz past our little branch line train there, which is behind the Jinty. Now the 7Fs were designed in the 1920s. And a 280 locomotive, especially for the heavily loaded freight trains on the Somerset and Dorset, and that was to cope with the heavy gradients. I do believe that the locomotive superintendent was asking for more power for his, on his locomotives, and that's why these 7Fs were actually finally designed. Now when they were used for freight, they were usually banked by a Jinty if it was a big long heavy freight train. But when we come to the 1950s, the late 1950s, post-war, there was a boom in travel after the Second World War, and lots of Pat's holiday trains were coming down from the north of England, down from the north and from the Midlands. So you've got Manchester to Bournemouth, Birmingham to Bournemouth, I think it was Nottingham to Bournemouth or something like that. Well, trains from everywhere. All coming down full of happy holiday makers to spend their week or fortnight in Bournemouth. And it got to a stage in the late 1950s, early 60s, where almost anything was pressed into service to get these heavy express trains and heavy holiday maker trains over the really steep gradients of the Somerset and Dorset. And if you're coming out of Bath Junction, you literally hit almost turn 90 degrees almost back on yourself, and on a 1 in 50 gradients. And a train would not begin to be going downhill until it actually got to Coombe Tunnel. These were allowed to take 9 coaches unaided as far as I can remember, but they were very often seen double-headed. Very often with a 4F or a 2P locomotives, and then later on as well a fair number of standard class locomotives were also brought to the Somerset and Dorset to assist with the heavy trains. Now what I've done is that since you saw me do the review last, I've actually added as many parts as I wanted to from the detail pack. There were the dummy coupling hooks which go on the front of the buffers and on the back of the buffer, and also there was the steam pump. I don't know if I can actually zoom in enough to see that very well. We'll have a look now. We'll just see if we can get in there. Okay, I think you just about see down there. There's the additional coupling hook down there, and also the vacuum pipe there, which actually fitted to the front as well. That's actually made the model complete. The actual locomotive, it appears to be as described in the as it was when it was sold to me, as brand new. I've given this locomotive a good oiling since I bought it. I've given it a good going over a couple of times now, just to make sure that it's all starting to run freely, and it is beginning to free out quite nicely now when it's running very well. The 3 coaches are reasonably recent purchases. They're Dapple coaches, and they were bought as part of a job lot. I'm going to pick those up for £8 each, boxed. Now, the 7Fs, I paid a fair amount of money to get hold of my 7F, because you don't see them very often. Not certainly on that certain auction site where a lot of us get our stuff from. You don't see them for sale very often. And when this one popped up described as brand new in the box, I knew I had to have it. There's another YouTuber, and you probably saw him on the Hornby series. Callum, I think he's SDJR7F88 or something like that. Callum, he's just bought a 7F in Somerset and Dorset Prussian blue livery. I think it might be number 88, which is the one that's actually, or 53828, which is actually preserved on the West Somerset Railway. And if that's the case, he's very fortunate in getting that. In fact, I'll have a quick look and just see if I can find out the link to his website. Yeah, it is SDJR7F88. Let's give up that Callum. SDJR7F88. Worth looking at. He's trying to recreate part of the Somerset and Dorset joint railway. His layout obviously got all the proper scenery on and everything else. It's well worth a look. And I'm hoping he's going to put his let us see his 7F in action quite shortly. But tonight we'll be looking at mine, which is in the black LMS livery, which would have been carried after the Somerset and Dorset Joint Railway livery, and that would be probably from about the 1930s up until nationalisation. I think it was finally in 1930 that the Prussian blue livery was actually changed over to the LMS livery. Okay, and as you see, this is getting very nice now. It was a little bit of noise coming from it when I first bought it. When I say I gave it a good oiling, I think it's possibly been in the box a long time, and now it's running really smoothly, really nicely. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to pull this one into the station. Any problems with any of these locomotives tonight in the running is not down to the locomotives, it's down to the state of my layout. So I have 1 or 2 technical difficulties with it. I do have to take this one down at the end of every night, so I'm hoping to get a more permanent situation. I can start putting scenery on and stuff. One of the rooms in the house is going to become free soon, so I might be able to get that done for you. But until then, we got you'll need to have to put with me with my dodgy track problems every now and again. So we'll see if we can bring her in now. Just hold on a second, we'll be right there with it. Right, so let's see if we can bring her in and have a nice look at her when she's going into the station. Just loose off the tripod a second. and in we come. Just check she's clear of the junction, and we'll bring our next locomotive into use. Now you can see it just beyond there. So you've got the NMS livery in the front, NMS, all in black, and then behind there is a very, very dark blue. It's Prussian blue, and that's of the Somerset and Dorset Joint Railway, and that's SDJR, which is actually on the tender of that locomotive. So we'll just reverse this one out now and give her a little run around the track as well. We'll have a little talk about it. There we go, so that's the points all set. So let's see if we can reverse her out. Now you probably notice about this particular one is that this locomotive, you can probably hear it more than the other one, okay? Bit noisier, but a very, very good runner. I'll explain to you a little bit about why that is in just a moment, and we'll talk about the 2P class locomotives. Right, so that's the point set for straight ahead, and off we go. The class 2Ps. Now the locomotive we see going around here now, and the NMS 7F was a Bachmann. This 2P is a Hornby, and it's about 20 years old, and it's tender driven. So there's a lot of gears and cogs whizzing around in the tender to actually drive those tender wheels, and that's why it's just a little bit more noisy than the 7F. But it's been running very, very well since I bought it. In fact, it's quieting down actually since I've been running it. I put a little bit of grease on the cogs. You can buy a special locomotive grease now. The sort of grease that I use should be quite sick, because there's also some people are actually using it for drones as well. So I thought that might quieten things down a little bit, and it has. It's pulling some Great Western Clarity coaches tonight. Because I've got a bit of a shortage of Midland Railway rolling stock, but I do believe that that these Hornby Clarity coaches, they look similar to the Midland Railway ones anyway. So I think it looks the parts going round. Looks quite nice. Now the 2Ps were the main locomotives up until about the 1930s, and there was a main reason for that is because of the weight limit on the bridges, which was on the branch line running into Bathween Park. If you imagine that the Somerset and Dorset ran from Bathween Park to Everkeach Junction, well, there was a junction of a branch line that came off at Mangotsfield and then went down to Bathween Park. I think the bridges were upgraded in the 1930s, so that's when they were able to actually run some heavier locomotives. But really, I mean, up until you know, relatively recent times of the Midland Railway, they were actually using what they call a small engine policy. Now these were allowed to carry 200 tons over the Somerset and Dorset unaided, and they also put the Pines Express. Well, I think the Pines Express consisted of 6 coaches when it did that, and it also consisted of a dining car. Now I say it's in Prussian blue livery, and it's by Hornby, and I think it's about 20 years old, this locomotive. Doing a very good job of putting our train along the Somerset and Dorset tonight. And again, I've done a review of this particular locomotive, which you can look up on my channel. If you want more of an in-depth talk about them. Now they were very often used on double-headed trains, together with 7Fs, with the 7F. That's really again to get the heavy express trains up over the main dips. In fact, double heading was very much a feature of the Somerset and Dorset, right up until when the 9F locomotives were drafted into service on the Somerset and Dorset. But I think they were only used between 1960 and 1962, and I think they were brought back, the Evening Star was brought back onto the Somerset and Dorset in 1963. And the 9F is one of my actual, on my wish list actually. We'll put her up a little bit closer, we'll zoom in on her I think, have a better look. Here we are, let's bring her up nice and close. Now you can clearly see the Prussian blue livery there, the lovely lining on it and everything. A really, really nice model by Hornby. I mean, I think if it was, if you asked me where it would sit if it was on sale today, it would obviously be probably be loco driven, almost certainly be loco driven, and it would probably fit into the railroad range. I mean, unless they actually carry out some major upgrades to it. And it's not to say it's a bad model, because it's an excellent model, especially for the time that these were actually produced by Hornby. And in fact, I think they've up until recently, I think they produced a 2P. But I think they were actually selling it as in the in their top of the range, as a top of the range locomotive. When I think some reviewers reckon it really was more of a railroad locomotive. But I'd say it's a lovely model in my opinion. It's got glazed cab windows and everything else. And with my particular example, because of its age, is actually tender driven. So let's bring it around now. In fact, the combinations of locomotives going over the Somerset and Dorset Joint Railway, I think a lot of people were fans of the Somerset and Dorset simply because of the huge variety of locomotives you could see. You might see a 7F pulling a freight train, being banked by a Jinty. You might see a 2P locomotive piloting a 7F, or maybe a Bullet Pacific. Or one of the standard class 4s or standard class 5s. And the Somerset and Dorset Railway was actually filmed in colour by Ivatt Peters, and you can, I think, I've managed to get fairly recently managed to get hold of the DVD of his filming of the Somerset and Dorset Joint Railway. We'll just watch our Somerset and Dorset Joint Railway 2P thundering through the station there, past our branch line train. And we'll move on to another one of our locomotives in just a moment as well. Okay, so we're going to bring her into the station. You can see how it runs over points as well. Like I say, you can hear the mechanism in the tender driven locomotive over there. But in my opinion, I'm not that worried about tender driven locomotives. I've been basically buying locomotives since about the early 1990s, and a lot of the locomotives then, certainly second hand ones, Hornby would have been tender driven, and they accommodate a sort of a Ringfield style motor, let's say. Now let me just get up. We'll change those points, and we'll bring in the 2P. And then we're bringing our next locomotive. Right, here we go. Let's see if we can bring her in. Very nice over the points, this particular locomotive. Coming in now. And perhaps you can imagine it, well certainly in the 1930s, these locomotives would have been responsible for putting the Point Express. And they would have been a solo engine, but they would have been limited to 6 coaches. Okay, so we'll just change the points, and then we'll have a look at our next locomotive. Quite nice to get the trains out and have a nice little running session. Now we'll just move over now until the now what should we have? We'll go for the Ivatt Class 2 tank, I think. Ivatt tank BR Late Crest by Bachmann. So let's just see if we can bring her out. Now I do believe that this is a split chassis style locomotive, this particular one we can see coming out now. 262 tank engine, a bit of similar wheel arrangement to a Prairie really. These trains were seen on the branch line, as far as I'm aware. In fact, they were seen on a lot of branches over the western region of British Rail, and also on the Somerset and Dorset joint railway, but on the branch that would have run from Everqueech Junction to Highbridge. And in fact, I think two of these actually double-headed one of the last trains to go over the branch before the final closure of the Somerset and Dorset joint railway on the 6th of March 1966. Now we'll just set the point to go ahead. And in fact it's putting 2 Collet coaches, Western Region Collet coaches, but that's something which is perfectly feasible for the 1960s. Certainly Collet locomotives were actually brought in. The Western Region of British Rail took control of the Somerset and Dorset in 1959. Now a lot of people blame that on blame the closure of the Somerset and Dorset joint railway on its transferring over to the Western Region of British Rail, but you need to bear in mind this was the time of the Beeching report, and also huge road building programmes. I think Ernest Marple was the transport minister, who also owned his own roadstone company. Okay. And so, I mean, and as well as that, I mean, really, in the it was the late 1950s and the early 60s was the really last big heyday, last hurrah for rail travel, as it was known, you know, for busy Somerset and Dorset expresses and things. Really, because so many people bought cars. I mean, after the Second World War. Obviously a lot of people just end up buying some pre-war cars, things like Austin 7s and stuff, but then once the Miniatt had finally landed, and the Morris Minor and the Austin A35, and then finally the Ford Cortina, I think that appeared in about 1962-63. I mean, cars like that becoming available to the masses would have meant that a lot of traffic would have been lost from the railways. But these, like I say, these Ivatt tanks were used everywhere. They were used on the Cheddar Valley line, certainly, which ran between Yatton and Wells, and certainly, I say they were certainly seen on the Somerset and Dorset branch between Highbridge and Burnham-on-Sea. Sorry, between Everqueech and Highbridge. Okay, like I say, it's putting 2 maroon Collet coaches, and I think one's a main line and one's a replica railways. Now this is one of the locomotives which spent a very great deal of time up in the attic, and I only got all my stuff down because of the lockdown, and this ran straight out of the box. I was able to run this straight out of the box, no problem at all. So that was the Bachmann Ivatt 262T tank engine. In British Railways black, lined with the Lake Crest. So perhaps we can imagine this one going down from Everqueech Junction to Highbridge. I think that the Somerset and Dorset joint railway, the part between Highbridge and Burnham-on-Sea, that was close to regular traffic in 1951. It still took freight traffic and the occasional excursion train, but really it's kind of main use as a fully functioning station for passengers. It was actually closed to the main passenger traffic in 1951, so not long after the end of the Second World War, really. So that was really the beginnings. So some of the things which were happening to our railways, closure-wise, and running down, was certainly going ahead pre-beaching. I think the line between Glastonbury and Wells from the Somerset and Dorset Joint Railway branch, that was closed in 1951. I think also the branch of Bridgewater. So I mean, certainly some of the closures of the Somerset and Dorset were actually pre-beaching. Now what we're going to do is we're going to bring our locomotive in now. Now we're going to have a look at our last locomotive. You've seen this one running around the track very, very well. Very nice runner, this one, the Bachmann 262T. I say I do believe it's a split chassis locomotive. I mean, I did buy this in the early 2000s. What happened was Bachmann carried on with the mainline locomotives, which were split chassis. When mainline, the parent company Palatoy, sold up, they briefly become replica railways, as far as I'm aware, and then the name was finally transferred over to Bachmann, or the main part of it was Bachmann, and that's the Bachmann you see today. Okay, I mean, I've got to be honest with you. I mean, I've found the Bachmann stuff over the years to be quite good quality, and I've enjoyed running my Bachmann trains. Hornby ones have been fine too, of course, and that's what we're looking at in a minute. Is a Hornby train. Okay, so we'll just give her a quick change of points, and then we're moving on to our last and final locomotive. Okay, you can see this one handles points really, really well. I mean, a nice locomotive, this one. I do enjoy driving this one. Now our last locomotive, it's these coaches, that is, that the Jinty's going to be pulling, are light blue. Now I suspect they're probably meant for the Caledonian Railway set. Okay, they look like the shade of blue for the Caledonian Railway. So okay, it's not quite Prussian dark blue, but it's near enough for my purposes, at least for this railway. So what we're going to do is we'll be running her out to the station now. It's on this little branch line station there. A very, very numerous engine on the Midland Railway, and obviously a lot they were also seen on the Somerset and Dorset Joint Railway as banking engines, and also used for shunting and local passenger services. This one's doing now is putting a local passenger service. Now, I'm only guessing that some of the local services, I certainly know at least one local service was run by a Jinty. I've actually seen it in a film before. I think that was a local evening service ran from Bath Green Park up to Vinegar. Now, I suspect what that was probably doing was taking over a lot of the workers from Bath, who were working in Bath. There are a lot of loads of little local stations on the Somerset and Dorset. Once you came out of Bath Green Park, I think the first station you went to was Midford. I think then there was Wellow, and it went on all the way to really to Evercreech Junction. I think there was a halt at Shoshcombe, Chilcompton, Midsummer Norton, Radstock, Masbury. I think there was a station at Shepton Mallet. Evercreech. Now I just hit the limit for my running session at the moment. Okay, so this video might not be out till tomorrow morning. It's going to take quite a long time for me to render it. As a matter of fact, I might even do most of the heavy work on this in the morning, because my computer is quite slow. As I said before, my computer is quite slow at rendering. I could put the video together. It's just rendering it really. Okay, now the Jinty. We'll talk about the Jinty now that we're on to got some extra time to run. It's an 060 tank engine. Now, if the 7F was pulling a big heavy freight train, there'd be very often a Jinty on the back, and certainly coming out of Bath Green Park, going from Bath Green Park. The Jinty would assist as far as the entrance of Combe Down Tunnel, and that's where Combe Down Tunnel, actually going from Bath, that actually ran downhill gradient, and so the banker would detach itself, and then be given a special key or staff to run back into Bath Green Park. As a matter of fact, I do believe, the line from Bath Green Park, at least as far as Midford or Wellow, was single track, including Devonshire Tunnel and Combe Down Tunnel. Okay, but here we can see this one now going around quite happily, pulling its coaches. Like I say, it's a Hornby, so if we're looking at the makes of these locomotives, the Class 2P, which you saw over there, the magnificent 2P in Prussian blue, that's Hornby. The Jinty that's going round at the moment, that's Hornby. The tank engine there, the 262 tank, you see right in the distance there, that's Bachmann. And then our magnificent 7F, you can see just there, 13810, or 280. That's a recent acquisition of mine. That's also a Bachmann. Now, I don't usually go on too much about prices, but I think, you know, some of us were sort of rubbing our eyes looking at some of these prices. It's certainly on eBay. But I think it's the way of the world now. I mean, certainly some new locomotives, like the latest Hush from Hornby, I think that's about £220 now to buy a new locomotive. Yeah, some new Bachmann locomotives are coming in at what, £200 plus sometimes. So really, I think nowadays, I mean, certainly when you're looking for, if you're looking for something that's a little bit rare or special, you don't see very often, I think, unfortunately, we've got to bite the bullet and dive in, and that's what I've been doing with my locomotive collection. I've had to decide to myself, you know, whether I want these or not. The Jinty, believe it or not, that came with the 4 coaches, and that was quite cheap. I think it was only about £30 odd, if I remember rightly. So I got a loco and the 4 coaches there for next to nothing. As far as today's prices were concerned, I mean, normally it would have, a couple of years ago, it would have been called a very fair price. That's our lovely Jinty going round. Also, again, it's in Prussian blue. They've got SDJR written on the water tanks. And that's the original livery of the Somerset and Dorset Joint Railway. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to wrap things up, okay? And we'll, after watching this one go around a little bit more, we'll have another little last look around the layout. So, you've got our LMS 7F and 2P, very often seen double heading together. You've got our Jinty just went by then. That's our banking and assistant engine, very often been used on freight trains, and then on local passenger trains and for shunting. And then our Ivatt tank engine up there, right in the distance you can see, and that would have been used mainly for branch line use. Now, if you've enjoyed this tonight, I hope you enjoyed it. Would you please tick the like button? It does help my channel, and subscribe if you're not subscribed to my channel yet. That don't cost you anything. I mean, all it means is that you'll be made aware of additional videos that I'm actually making. I do intend to get another locomotive in the near future to add to my collection, and then we might go back to doing a Great Western running session in the near future as well, because obviously I'm in the mainly a Great Western collector. It's just that I've always liked the Somerset and Dorset Joint Railway, so I decided that I would actually go and get some S&D locos, which obviously we can see running now. Okay, so like I say, if you like, give me the thumbs up and subscribe to see more videos. Thank you very, very much for watching, and thanks to everybody who subscribed to my channel so far. Very, very much appreciated. And I should bid you farewell and good night.